Hello, and I am Erica Garcia Abigail, and welcome to what is a very interesting but important part of your course. So, this module will speak and touch upon how to introduce decolonization into your yoga classes, and it's really just you learning what is decolonizing yoga, right? Because just the mere word decolonization can stir up a lot of different sensations in all of us. And in this video, I want to do a brief introduction to like what is the topic, and this topic. It has to be, it's just an introduction because I like to do this one in person so that we can really engage and really open dialogue with one another. So we do this as a group, but you should have this at least as the foundation. And because I'm also a firm believer that unlearning and re education and healing always happens amongst peers. So you should be in a safe space to have open dialogue where you can be humble and ask the questions, ask the hard questions, right? So what is decolonization? Classically, decolonizing refers to the process of undoing the legacies of colonialism, and that would include challenging and dismantling what is colonial power over where you are or who you are, right? These are the set structures, the narratives, and the practices. And it involves really recognizing and addressing in the ways that colonial histories have shaped our contemporary societies over time, and the cultures, how they've shifted, and the knowledge systems. And this often comes with reclaiming our indigenous identities, the native traditions, the languages that the colonizers once banished in their attempt to try to control or take over who they've captured or who they thought they discovered, whether it be people or land. And now they've subjugated them, the original native people of that land, to their ideals, their religions, their ways, because they felt they were above them. And we're in a time where indigenous people come from different lands, from all different spaces, and our circumstances, and we're finally starting to speak up, reclaiming our rich cultures and our roots. And in turn, all of these efforts are shedding light into, really the bad things that have happened in the past, and it's promoting social justice and equality and reparations because of all these hidden secrets of what has been done to our people in the past. So, in relation to yoga in the US, how does it show up? Why is it so important there? Well, it's really important. Well, we'll start with cultural appropriation. Yoga is not based and was nor was it created in the US, right? Yoga has its rich ancient Indian philosophy and spirituality and the story. And however, it has been often commodified and stripped of its cultural context in the US. We cannot do that because this raises concerns about cultural appropriation. Which elements of the culture are used outside of their original context without respect or understanding? And I will even add, nor the attempt to respect and understand, right? The US, our society, we're an entitled society. It is what it is. And those in the US have a tendency to want to take over, claim something as theirs, rename it, rebrand it, repackage, sell it as something as theirs. And they've been doing it with everything, including yoga. So we just have to stop that. We've just got to stop that because it is just so utterly disrespectful. There's no need for drunk yoga, goat yoga, pup yoga. Like, just be true to what it is because it is so beautiful, right? And that leads into the next way. How can you decolonize? Well, commercialization. That's the biggest one. The branding and selling of all things yoga at this point literally has become, did you know, $1 billion industry? It's insane. Let's look at the numbers because as I was recording this recording specifically, I did this in October of 2025. And according to a recent study published by at Wellness Creative Co., the yoga industry is worth $370 billion worldwide, and it is growing at an annual rate of 9.4%. That's insane. And that comprises several segments. That's studios, retreats, clothing, mats, blocks, and other accessories that go along with yoga in itself, right? The popularity itself of yoga and those practicing yoga are about 300 million people globally that practice yoga on a regular basis. That was according to Unwind Yoga Studios, their research. And in the US, the American yoga studio market is worth $11.8 billion. And even though it's currently experiencing flat growth, according to IBIS Worldwide, it's still $11 billion, right? And the biggest driver is that now there is this much more increased awareness for us taking care of our own mental health. And with this growing awareness of the need to take care of our mental health, our physical health, even the yoga retreat business has boomed. I was looking at the numbers for that also to pull it out for this because I teach from Puerto Rico, which has a wellness tourism type of feel to it now, right? And so, did you know that wellness tourism, the yoga tourism market, which includes retreats, yoga retreats, it has been projected to reach 182.5 billion in 2024, which is about 1.3 trillion as far as wellness tourism in the world of all the other categories. So I can tell you from being a studio owner for over a decade, I've truly seen the impact of commercialization of yoga. And I've seen it evolve. And the commercialization of yoga really has led to um, just focusing on the physical asana practice and like marketing, like weight loss, looking good, blah, blah, blah. Yes, those are byproducts. But there is a complete and intentional neglect of also, let's say, branding or really understanding that there's a philosophical and spiritual dimensions that are so essential to the practice, because it is here, these are the parts of the practice where we use the tools of our for our own personal growth, learn the pranayama breath work practices, learn the meditation practices that help us all overall with depression, anxiety, mental health. That's where all those practices come from. But instead, they've rebranded pranayama to now the big craze is 9D breath work, this type of breath work, blah, 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 instead of just saying pranayama. And they've rebranded everything that has to do with meditation as mindfulness, as an overall, overarching, interchangeable, word to mean meditation when it's not. Because remember, mindfulness are the techniques that we use to prepare the body, like the body scans, the tension release exercise to get to do meditation. And since that feels less Indian, right? And they've sanitized it under mindfulness, that's how they've mass produced the commercialization of it. But that has diluted the practice and it's actually alienated its original meanings and intentions. And we need to go back to teaching and respecting yoga for what it is and use the proper names, yes, including the Sanskrit. So next is equality, inclusivity, right? The decolonization of yoga involves making this practice inclusive and accessible to all, especially for the marginalized communities, right? This means that recognizing the contributions of various cultures to the practice of yoga and ensuring that diverse voices are also represented. What does that mean? Hire people of different indigenous cultures if you're a studio owner, right? That also means you stopping the mindset that it's a luxury when we all know it's a necessity. It is not only is it a necessity, but it's not for the elite. So stop pushing expensive clothing, expensive yoga mats. Bring your prices to meet and serve the community where you are living and you are working in. And for those of you who are bringing yoga to a community that basically speaks a different language than your own native tongue, like I will speak, for me, I'll use me as the example, right? I've moved from the Northeast and I now live in Puerto Rico and I've been here a few years now. And the local language is Spanish. And I have to respect that. And yes, I can teach. I just didn't in the past, but I am now teaching in Spanish or bilingually. So if you're in a place where the locals speak a different language, and that means you in this case, you're the one that needs to learn the Spanish, or at least make your offerings bilingual. And inclusivity means that you are not to expect the locals to come to your class and have to learn English just so they can take your class. That's not being inclusive. What it means is that it's not their job, it's your job to meet them where they're at. It is your job to learn their needs and know their concerns and know their triggers. That's your job, it's not theirs. Because you're the foreigner stepping in here. And that's what it means to decolonize it in your community. You'll often be the first exposure to yoga to them. So if you're the one introducing it to them, then it's your job to teach yoga in all of its richness and all of its authenticity as a science that it is, because we're all humans and everyone at this point is curious. So this is where you need to check yourself, because if you don't want to serve the community in which you're living, then who are you really serving and why? Meaning, do you want the locals or do you just want the tourists? Do you want the locals or you just want the expats? Right? And then what is your resistance? That's another one, right? Because not teaching to the locals, not marketing in the language of the locals, then you are keeping yoga exclusive and you are keeping it elite and you're not being inclusive. And you have to ask yourself why. That's the big one. That's the unlearning. That's the inner work that we have to do as yoga teachers, right? And the next is education and awareness. So decolonizing yoga calls for educating practitioners, like my job for all of you, right? Understanding the historical and cultural contexts of yoga so that you can walk away with the awareness and foster this respect for its origins and encourage more authentic practices. And me as a trainer, more authentic teachers that are going to teach true yoga, right? And in summary, for this part of the introduction of this video of the introduction of decolonizing it in the US, remember it involves acknowledging yoga's roots, promoting inclusivity, and respecting the cultural significance of the practice while challenging the dominant narratives that are all surrounding you and have emerged in around in it, right? And yes, it starts with you, the yoga teacher. And yes, just you, one person does make a difference. You make such a difference because particularly when you're teaching from authenticity, you remember that and you stand tall, remembering that you're leading by example because they're looking to you for this. So the next portion of this video, I want to keep this one more like a checklist that I put together with a lot of examples from the lens of a yoga teacher and how to manage these scenarios or situations or quotes that you may have heard in like all of the circles you've been in and how you can manage it moving forward in your own classes. So one, set the tone of reverence before you start, right? Instead of just jumping right into asana or talking about fitness, begin with short grounding moments that honor the lineage. And I'm going to use English and Spanish for the next few checklists because, again, I'm teaching in Puerto Rico, right? So maybe say something like, before we begin, I want to acknowledge that yoga comes from a deep and ancient tradition rooted in India, and it's more important than just movement. It's a path of self-discovery and liberation. Buenos días. Antes de comenzar, quiero reconocer que el yoga proviene de una tradición profunda y antigua arraigada en India y es más que solo movimiento, es un camino de autodescubrimiento y liberación. And then you can start the class, right? When you start this way, you immediately center the practice in context, and it invites the students into that sacredness of the space. It brings everyone together to start with the same intention. And you know the magic that happens when everyone moves together, right? So number two would be use gentle education through the class, right? You want to sprinkle in short, digestible information that honors yoga's roots. Sprinkle it in so that they can take it slowly, little by little, class by class, right? So, for example, during your asana practice, you may say, oh, this pose is called Virabhadrasana. Virabhadrasana means warrior pose in Sanskrit, the ancient language of yoga. Because when you name the poses in Sanskrit, it helps us stay connected to the traditions. Doesn't that feel nice? I'll say it in Spanish now. Esta postura se llama Virabhadrasana, la postura del guerrero. Y eso es en sánscrito, el idioma antiguo de yoga. Y nombrarla en sánscrito nos ayuda a mantenernos y conectarnos con las tradiciones. And this teaches without preaching. In fact, it even incites curiosity. And even more so when you're teaching the class bilingually and you're giving it to them in their own native language, it shows that you're very interested in really getting them to understand what yoga is. That you took the time to learn how to say it in the language that will resonate much more deeply with them so that they can have true reflection and true curiosity and a beautiful experience. Three would be to, yes, invite reflection, but not debate, right? Reflection. So offer space to contemplate rather than confront, right? This isn't a who's better than who or whatever. So, for example, you would say something like, in the West, yoga is often taught as a workout, but I like to teach its true purpose, which includes ethics, meditation, and inner transformation. So let's reflect on how we can approach our yoga with a lot more depth for this class. So if you noticed, as we were walking through it, I was inviting the curiosity, right? I wasn't calling anyone out, but I was calling everyone in. This invitation to reflect, to change our perspective, to learn to look at it from different aspects that we're not shown on a day-to-day basis or in social media, right? So when you come from a space of educating and inviting more reflection, there isn't a debate. What you're doing is you're helping those who live in fear, especially those who live in fear of religious dogma. And I would have to say that's probably one of my biggest walls that I face when I introduce yoga in new communities is they're curious, but they are so fearful of going against their own religious practices and beliefs. And we have to teach them that this is not a religion. It is a philosophical science. For our human experience, which is so different, right? So four is model what decolonization looks like. So remember, you're the example. So include short quotes of yogic texts. Like they could be in the pose or they could be sitting in meditation and say, hey, Yoga Sutra 1.2 is yoga stilling of the mind chatter. Can you find it? Teach the 8 limbs of yoga briefly over several classes or make a workshop out of it. Avoid cultural stereotypes or over-branded yoga language. Avoid it at all costs. Be authentic. Go back to the richness of the writings, the sacred texts. They will give it all to you. And share the names of teachers or texts that have shaped your understanding, that helped you digest it better. And even turn them, like I said, into workshops to invite more time of deeper reflection and conversations, because the more people take yoga, the more curious they will get. Without a doubt, especially when they find a teacher that they can truly connect with soul to soul and that they feel seen and heard, it will invite some beautiful dialogue. And that leads to 5, invite curiosity to go deeper, right? So end your class with like optional resources or quotes for reflection. You can give little cards out, right? But make sure you're giving it in all the languages of people that are there, right? You can even say something like, hey, if you're interested in learning more about the roots of yoga, or how we can practice it with more respect and authenticity, I'm always happy to share any resources, recommend a book, answer any questions after class. I would love to just help support you in your curiosity, right? And like I said in the last tip, that you can create a workshop. You don't even have to go that far. You could say something as simple like, hey guys, I invite any of you who would like to stay for a cup of tea and chat after class. let me know if you're interested, or maybe if you don't have the time today, another time, let me know. I'm always available. Or, I have 30 minutes today to discuss it, and then go outside, grab your tea, and sit down and make yourself available and seen. Because I can guarantee half the time they're going to run and go change and grab their stuff. But if you make yourself available, you'll often find that even if you can't stay for the entire 30 minutes, a student may come up and say, hey, I got like 10 minutes. I was curious about blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, I can't today, but will you have time next week? And it shows that you're being um, available as an open resource, right? And it opens a gentle door for their own continued learning and for dialogue. And it also helps you build a beautiful community. You will continually just grow the community with people. And below is a list of key phrases that I really encourage you to avoid, along with I'm going to also give you some conscious alternatives that are rooted in respect and inclusivity, right? The number one that I see all the time is let's burn off that karma. Please avoid saying something like that. It really misrepresents karma as something bad, something you need to get rid of, and get rid of it through physical effort. That's not what karma is, right? Karma, as you're learning, is a complex ethical and spiritual concept. It's not a calories burning thing, it's something to guilt ridden. It's not any of that. So instead, maybe just try saying, like, why don't we today look to intentionally move with awareness? And that's it, right? Or every breath is a chance to create more presence today, now, this moment. That's it. So leave the karma fighting energy out of it. Two, we're doing a detox flow to cleanse your chakras. No, avoid that. Please. Oversimplifying or commodifying the complexities of the subtle body energy system is a big no no, right? And it is also a big no no because it, again, negates the spiritual traditions, suggests physical postures can replace deep internal work when we know that it's not true. You can't do that work with just the physical. You just can't. So instead, try saying, let's work to open up the areas of tension, invite energy and balance into certain parts of our bodies. That's it. Three, namaste, y'all. Namaste. I can't even tell you how many times my brain explodes every time I hear this, or see it on a t shirt, or see it on some bullshit. I can't tell you how disrespectful. It is just so disrespectful. It just really is, right? Just avoid using it at all costs because it trivializes the sacredness of this greeting, right? Namaste translates the light in me, recognizes the light in you. It speaks to you, who I am greeting, as a recognition that I see you as a divine, beautiful, perfect being. So instead of saying y'all and namaste or whatever other version you have seen, please return to what it is. Don't turn this spiritual concept into a meme or a pun or a slogan. Please don't. Try instead using namaste authentically, and only if you're going to teach the meaning. And if you don't feel comfortable with it in Sanskrit, that's fine. You don't have to use it. You can just simply just say, I am closing this class. I recognize the light in all of you. Thank you. Right? That's it. The light in me recognizes the light in you. Thank you. Or don't even say it at all. Just say, thank you for sharing the practice with me today. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. But please, please, just don't bastardize what is a sacred greeting because of your awkwardness. Because you're not too sure if you should or shouldn't say it. You don't want to offend anybody. You want to make a joke out of it. It's not a joke. It's a sacred greeting. Treat it as such. Number 4, this is yoga for everyone. There's no need for that all that philosophy stuff. Well, avoid all that because that dismisses the very heart of what yoga is. It is ethical, it is philosophical, and it is a spiritual teaching. And when you say it that way, it implies that tradition isn't important. And you're saying that this is yoga, and saying that this is yoga for everyone and no need for the philosophy. Well, I'll tell you, if that is your frame of mind of thinking, then you're an exercise teacher, because you're only taking asana, which is the third limb of the eight. You're teaching movement as exercise, not a yoga class. And if you want to teach a true yoga class, then you must add in the reflective philosophical thoughts. You must add in some spiritual teachings. Remember, this is an entire system, and it is a system that is intertwined. It is not a system of eight where you can just pick and choose which ones you want to use and throw the rest away. Throw the rest away. It's not. It's almost like a ladder. You have to go all the way up the eight. So instead, try saying something like, this practice includes movement and moments of reflection, just as yoga has always been meant to be, or meant to be taught. That's it. Number 5, another one that, like, I don't even understand, but we're gonna do Indian style yoga. Indian style breathing, Indian music, Indian poses. I don't know. Just avoid all of that, because that reduces its vast sacredness of the tradition and makes it a generic, like, cultural thing. Indian style sounds very vague and very stereotypical. There is no they and us. We're using what is theirs, right? So instead, use the specific terms: pranayama, classical yoga music, traditional postures, hatha, right? Because it all comes from hatha. I don't care what label you have it. It all comes from the big system, right? Number 6, you have to do this pose in order to do real yoga. I don't know who came up with that, but please avoid saying it, because that excludes students with physical limitation, and it equates yoga with an asana alone practice. And I can't tell you how many people have come into my studio and have told me, oh, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. Or I'm told I couldn't do yoga because I can't do handstands. Or I don't like going on my head, so I can't do real yoga. So what can I do instead? And I'm like, what? There is no one pose. Let's be clear. But I will tell you, someone probably said that one quote and others ran with it as gospel. But to dismantle where it may have come from, there are some teachings in Hatha that will state that headstand is considered like the king pose, because I've been asked, we know headstand's king, what's the queen, or whatever. But I believe, however, it was made in context was that they were speaking of the benefits of going upside down, or rather head below heart, because a simple and mere forward fold can actually give you the same benefits as going upside down on your head or your hands, right? You see what I mean? So you as a yoga teacher should always bring them back to the principles and speak to them differently to help educate them, and try something instead of like, there is one expression, this is one expression of the pose, but feel free to explore any variation that serves your body today. And that should go with every asana you teach, not just headstand or handstand or whatever pose they think is the one pose that they're supposed to do, right? And if you also notice, I didn't say modification, because the word modification has an undertone that you have limits. Again, instead I use the word variation, which means you have agency over your body and you have the freedom to choose the version that feels good for you today, in this moment and in this class. And if you don't know which one it is, please ask me, because as your teacher, that is why I am here, to guide you so that it feels comfortable for you. 7, yoga is universal. It doesn't belong to any one culture. Please avoid that one too. Because again, that's your attempt in trying to erase yoga's origins, and it supports cultural appropriation. It belongs within the Indian traditions. That cannot be denied. You may have been trained in the US or wherever you are, but you cannot deny its origins. And I believe when they said that, again, whomever it was that was quoted in saying this, I think what they meant to say was that it is universal for everyone in every culture. Every human can benefit from it because it is a science, that is a philosophy for a human experience, that we could all benefit from the application of using some version type of yoga in our lives. And someone ran with the other quote. So instead, try saying, yoga has its roots in ancient Indian traditions, and let's honor that as we practice in a modern context and see how it resonates with you. That's it. So remember, decolonizing yoga starts with you, one person at a time, one class at a time. It's not about perfection, it's about just remaining aware and intentional with your actions and with your own learning and with your languages. It's not about taking one class with me or listening to one section and then saying, suddenly I know better, right? Because we don't all know better. I'm still always unlearning every single day. So you listen to this video context. Now you have a bit more awareness. So from here on in, it's about pausing. Remember, as a yoga teacher, it's about mindful language and actions that reflect humility, inclusivity, and a deep respect for yoga's roots. That is how you teach authentically. That is where you teach from the heart. And when we dismantle all of all the colonizing that has happened, you can do it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it opened you up to new awareness and sensitivity of your own, how you present yourself and how you can switch, and respecting deep yoga's deep roots and showing up. We just have to show up and we can do it. And when we show up better, we honor, but we also stand in the truth for our students. And that's what's important. It was an honor to guide you today. Thank you.